Hello. Hey, everybody. Before anyone gets on, I'm going to send this out. Send it out, send it out. Okay, still sending. How is everybody's evening going? Hey, hey everyone. Oh my gosh, Jess, you're on here already. Okay, she is on it. Hey, hey Ann, how you doing? Chella.
Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to do this.
Yes, me too. You're outside. It looks nice.
Well, it's outside lighting. You really can't beat it, honestly. It just makes everything better.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true. Well, we've
Hi,
talked
Amber.
about
Hi,
to,
Alyssa.
I'm gonna get to it because I know the situation right now. So, my first question is going to be, do you believe the amount of years an agency has been in business accredited or discredits their ability to help a family or a nanny?
So, oftentimes, yes. But my strongest belief when it comes to nanny agencies is that it depends on the person running it. So, when
Mm-hmm.
you go to look for a nanny agency, you want to look for all the telltale signs, like how long they have been in business is a very good question. However, like I want them to let me know what their domestic workers' rights are in their state. I want them to let me know how they handle my personal information, like my social security. I want
Mm-hmm.
to know which background checking company they use, and I want to know how they vet their clients. So I have a list of questions that I like to ask agencies going in
Mm-hmm.
so that I kind of know where they are in their
Okay.
process and, whether or not I feel comfortable with them representing me at that point. So, very long term agencies generally have a really good feel of all of these, but that doesn't necessarily rule out any pop up agency that could start as long as they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So does that just rule out people who just started?
It is a very common thing right now
Mm-hmm.
to have a boutique agency or a pop up agency. And a lot of them I know because, like a little background on me,
Oh,
I have done agency work for at least 12 years. I started off as actually as a parent coach. So I would go into the family and help them decide if they wanted a nanny or daycare or what best suited their family and how to go about that. And
mm-hmm.
then I started a nanny agency of my own. And then I partnered up with the now founder of Caring Connections agency, Bettina, and we ran an agency in Westchester for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I left that agency when I moved to Oklahoma, but I have continued to do agency work. Now I'm actually an employee of Bettina's, but I also have done consulting work for many agencies just to help get their, process running smoother.
Yeah.
Um, so basically, uh, I went on and I forgot your question.
It is totally okay. Just saying, like, does this discredit like the pop-up agencies, the ones who just
Oh,
start?
so what I have seen is a lot of the consulting work I've done has been with the pop-up agencies, and they have a lot to learn sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So again, sometimes it can be a really strong person that really knows the nanny field. Sometimes it can be maybe somebody that doesn't really know anything about nanny life that just thinks that it would be a good way to make money, and they really have to learn the ropes and take the time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it can, yeah, it can really affect how your situation is handled during placement. If they're
I want to ask you spoke on the parent coach. So how do you feel it was from the parent aspect trying to go through an agency? Hey, Alyssa. Hey, everybody. By the way.
um, parents going through agencies, hopefully most of the time they have a pretty smooth time of it. Any form of agency, any side on that is going to be hard because as an agency, you are working with a double-edged coin. Like you have all of the nanny's thoughts, feelings, emotions, concerns. You have all the family's thoughts, feelings, emotions, concerns, and any of those can change at any given time. And you can only relay the information you have to each party. So it can be frustrating for either party. I think a lot of parents go into agencies and are quite surprised by how much they cost. And that can be very, very hard for them. Have you faced that? I'm sure you have.
Yes, because they just think, well, you're going to find the person, you're going to place them with me, but it's like I don't think that's one of the questions. They don't know the backhand of it, like the background checks. Like those are actually very expensive when it comes to like nationwide because you have to go through every county, so it costs more. And then also just doing reference checks on like education, just it goes like it's a lot of things that go into finding a candidate. And also ads, like you're putting out ads and people are applying for, the application and that costs money to run ads. So
there are so many different levels and areas that cost so much money for an agency. Like you said, advertising, manpower to check references, to interview, to do coaching, to do pay negotiation, to, certify all the certifications that they're real. There are so many steps that it takes for an agency to get to a point where they will actually represent a nanny. And most of the time people don't understand how much goes into that. So usually after you explain to them like, well, look, background checks alone can cost up to $800 or more, depending on which state you're in. So there is a wide variety of services covered in the agency fee. And I do think a lot of moms don't really understand, or a lot of parents, not necessarily just moms, but parents don't understand going in, like why the fee is that expensive.
I do say that once you explain to them, most of them are like, okay, I understand. But then others sometimes still want to, try their hand in doing it on their own. But eventually, like the ones who do go out and do it on their own, they eventually come back and say, hey, okay.
It's really hard. Yeah. A lot of agencies now will actually offer minimal vetting services. And what that means is if you find the nanny and bring it to them, they can still do the background check and the reference checks. They're not having to interview the nanny. You don't get a lot of the perks like the replacement if the nanny doesn't work out and that kind of thing. But it can be more cost effective if you feel you have a really strong candidate in that case. So that is an option that some moms could look for, or families could look for.
Good. That's good. I hope everybody's taking notes on that. Do you want to do one of yours?
Yeah, so I've been asking questions just about all year. I've noticed so much animosity between nannies and agencies, and I've been wanting to pick at it to kind of understand why. I want to be able to do better for the nannies, but I also just want to understand. So I did get a lot of good questions. So one of them that was a repeat question that I found was interesting that I didn't expect was a lot of nannies are very concerned that their information is not actually getting to the family that's looking for a nanny. Generally speaking, it's a pretty competitive field. So we want to get your information to the family as soon as we can. What we don't have control over is what they do with that information when they get it. Whether they open it, whether they look at it, how they respond, like that is out of our hands. But generally speaking, if you are a strong candidate and you're qualified, I guarantee you that your information has been sent to the family because that's what we want to present to them. I do know one nanny had expressed a lot of issue with this in that she didn't feel that she was actually getting sent to the family. So what I would suggest, if that's the case, that you should just reach out to the agency and ask them.
Yeah.
Like, what date was my resume and my information sent, and can you verify that? Generally, agencies want to keep a very open communication with the nanny, and we want that back too. Like we want you to get back to us. So, I mean, I don't see that would be an issue. So I would say just ask if you're concerned for sure.
And also, like you said, it's competitive. So say, for instance, a family chooses another nanny. It is the agency's, part to tell the nanny, hey, they want a different candidate. I can see that step as being, passed. Then I will understand what they said, like their information not being sent. But that's the only thing I think of.
Yeah, and that goes back to if you're using a nanny agency that, handles everything, with candor and has done it for a long time, then you're likely not going to run into those issues. But it does happen. So, I mean, you can check in. I wouldn't suggest like hounding, checking in, but, definitely you can
Yeah.
check in if you're concerned about that.
Yeah.
And then I got another one from a Manny, and he was, asking if agencies can actually find jobs for Manny's. We want to, and we try. It
Yeah.
is still a very, very difficult. Um, it's still very difficult for nannies to get jobs. I mean, a lot of people haven't really opened their minds up to having a male nanny at this point. A lot more families are, but
Hmm.
again, it's one of those things where we can send their information and we can like strongly recommend you based on your qualifications. But what the family does with that is out of our hands. So we can, present you as best as we possibly can, and we want to, and we are open to, and we actually look for them. So
I just wonder, like, with families, like, even with the background check attached to, like, a Manny's, resume, are they still hesitant? Even seeing the background check, like, there's no offense, no anything, but it's like, if the
yeah,
child's still young and not of a certain age, are they still hesitant to hire?
I think they are, and I think there's a very large misconception that men can't really be maternal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a society thing. It's not necessarily just like the nanny thing, it's something that we all gotta, work on, I think. But when it comes to childcare, I do believe it is harder for male nannies out there to get hired.
And to take it from off of nannies, like, so is that saying, like, when you have a family unit, is that saying, like, you wouldn't leave your child with your husband? Like, our mothers, like, do our instincts just like, well, I don't trust, them with dad, or this is going, have they heard of a father? That's exactly what I was
Yes, and
talking about.
and I mean, we have actually said this. We brought this up before, Anne, but oftentimes I will still hear a mom refer to dad as babysitting. Like, oh yeah, dad's babysitting the kids tonight. And so to me, that's absolutely ridiculous because he's not babysitting, they're his kids. But it is largely just a mindset that is still out there in the childcare world. And I mean, I'm really happy to see that I know, right? I'm
Yeah,
really happy to see that it's
that's good.
starting to change. And I do know that there is like an up hire of male nannies. And I totally agree. And I'm just telling you what I've heard. So, I have seen a larger amount of male nannies getting hired, and I mean, I have supported that, and I will continue to support that, and hopefully
Absolutely.
that continues to change because there's a big benefit too, I think, to that.
Absolutely. Um, okay, I have one. I think, oh, we kind of touched on that. So I had a situation, I think this comes back to just communication, where a nanny turned in her resignation to me instead of returning it to the family. And we spoke about this. It was after the 90-day period of where, you can still come to me if you're not comfortable with saying it to your employer. But it was past the 90 days. So I was like, are you comfortable? Do you, she's like, oh yeah, I'm just going off to college and I just need to turn in. So it was just me like being able to say, hey, you're supposed to, turn this into your employer. I'm not your employer. I just place. But if you're not comfortable, I can do it. But she was like, no, I'm totally fine. Just going off to college. So
Yeah,
just making sure they understand that communication and just who to turn it into, who not to, if you're comfortable, if you're not comfortable, you know?
yeah. I think what you said that I think is key is, do you feel safe?
Hmm.
So from an agency standpoint, especially if you're still in the trial period, if you're like, look, this job is not for me, I don't feel safe here, I don't feel like I, want to go back, then I think it is the agency's job to let the family know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's important that you ask nannies when you are an agency, do you feel safe? To get a good grip on the situation, like, why is this not working out? Because if you have a family where maybe that happens once, maybe that happens twice, you really need to consider as an agency, is this a place that you want to put nannies?
Hmm.
Because I personally would not want to.
Yeah.
I think as a rule, if it's not a place that I would consider working, I don't necessarily want to represent them as a client.
I do have a random question. For like new nannies to the field, do you feel like they look at this as a real job?
You know, you might have just opened a can of worms. Um, I have been feeling a lot recently like a brand new nanny will come to the agency and they will have like maybe like a week or two of babysitting,
Mm.
and they're like, okay, and I want to make $35 an hour because that's the going rate for nannies. And I'm like, well, that's the going rate for a nanny in Manhattan if they have X amount of experience and X amount of certifications.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the time they're under the impression that it is the same as babysitting. So I have seen more of that. And I'm not a fan of that because we have worked real hard
Real money equals real.
in this. Yes. And we have worked very hard in this industry to make it more recognizable as an industry.
Mm-hmm.
I think over the last 10 years, the nanny industry has boomed. People are taking it more seriously. I feel like there's more laws that protect us. You know, it's an important job and people are starting to realize the value of it. And so I do think sometimes coming in, new nannies could have some misconception. I also think coming in, some new nannies are like awesome nannies, like meant to do this, like, you know, so it's another thing. It depends on the person. It can go either way, but I have seen that. Yeah.
I just think I thought that was interesting because when I first started, because I've been in for like a year and a month now. And when I started, I did my research. So, because I'm like, this is not babysitting. Like, there's a lot more work that comes into doing this. And
Yeah.
coming from daycare to being a nanny, it was a smooth transition for me, more so because I did a lot of research on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't go through an agency, but I understood the part of having a contract. And I do want to touch on that, like the importance of having a contract and letting nannies know not to get paid underneath the table and actually, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
That is super important. You do want to work on the books. I know that it is a lot less cash in some cases, but that's how you build your credit, your social security. That's how you make a name for yourself in the financial world. You cannot buy a house. You cannot sometimes buy a car if you don't have proof of your financial work. So you also can't apply for unemployment or disability, which a lot of nannies learned the hard way during COVID. And parents truly, truly need to want to pay on the books as well, because you need to protect your employee and you need to protect yourself. There are so many things that can happen. You know, so many times maybe like the nanny will try to get unemployment having not been on the books. And then what that does is it opens you up for an IRS audit. And there's really no reason not to. It's very simple. You can hire somebody to do it. You're going to get a tax break for doing it. And you're going to be building your financial future if you are a nanny. So yes, real job, real money, pay taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have one of your questions?
Yes. So I, also had a similar thing with the nanny that had worked there, asking about giving notice to the family. So I want to go back to that for a second and just say the second part of that, if you don't feel safe, yes, go to the agency, talk to them about it. If you do feel safe, talk to the family about it and try to leave well. Because if you leave well, if you let them know, like, look, I like you guys as people, but this is not the job for me. You know, I really, truly want to make sure I'm not leaving you in a bind. Can you like start looking for another nanny? And I'll be happy to stay until then. It's actually, I think most people are afraid to have that conversation. But when a family knows, like, okay, they're being honest with me, they are not leaving me in a bind, you know, they're trying to work with me, they're going to be more open to that. And if you can manage to leave your job well, then you may be able to use them as a reference. I've talked to many references that said, you know, she wasn't the nanny for us, but she was good with our kids and that she did this, this, and this. And she didn't, you know, leave us hanging.
What about that communication?
Yep. The communication is so important. So,
And then you also just don't know what bridges you're burning. You never know what you have to go back to if you need a reference, like you said. So
yes, and I know a lot of moms in the moms groups on Facebook. I've seen a lot of them get pretty vicious, and
yeah, I've seen.
it gets a little crazy, and so you know, for me, I personally would want to avoid that situation if I can. I mean, sometimes it's just going to happen, but
Yeah.
I try to leave all my jobs well, even the ones that I don't particularly love or like, because I want to be able to make a career out of this, you know. Yes. So, but another a question that I got is, how do I make agencies, like they want to know how to make agencies prioritize them. So if you come to an agency and you have all of your paperwork ready to go and you've updated your references to let them know they're going to be getting phone calls, like here's my resume, here are my letters of recommendation, here are my certifications, here's where I had them taken. If you come to the agency prepared with that information, you will get pushed up higher on that list just because you've taken a lot of the vetting on yourself in that way. And you might already have the information. So it's just organizing it and getting it to them. And a lot of times they're going to be able to take you seriously and they're going to get to place you faster if that's the case. So yes, just be responsive, be responsible, and show up when you need to. And that will definitely put you ahead of a lot of candidates.
And like I said, take it like a real job. Come to a real job like an interview. A lot of people, I would say, I've only seen this like a handful of times. They don't come to an interview prepared, like dress-wise or just resume, like anything. I'm just like, what happened to actually dressing up for an interview, you know, preparing?
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.
So,
and you know, there's that rule where you might go to a job interview and be crawling around on the floor with kids. So be comfortable. You can dress like casually, but you know, make sure that everything is, you know, where it's supposed to be and covered up. You know, something that you can move in easily and still look professional is what I would always suggest. And to clean up your social media. Because like I, for one, have had Facebook for a very long time. I don't want to date myself, but it's a long time. And I did not privatize it for the longest time. But then I went back and I looked at it, and I definitely don't want 22-year-old Jess representing 30-something-year-old Jess's life, you know? So I made some pretty hefty edits. I deleted a lot of posts and I privatized my account. And I would highly suggest most nannies do that as well, because also you want to create a sense of boundaries and you want to keep your private life private. Nanny jobs are tricky in that you walk a line between like professionalism, but also their personal life. You're in their personal life every day. It is so easy to be your boss's best friend. It is so easy to like get wrapped up in the family dynamics. And not that you shouldn't do that, but in the beginning, I think it's a good idea to just like keep your life as private as you can and stay as professional as you can on the job.
Also, I would also recommend that just making sure you know boundaries and making sure you know that yes, they can be your friend, but they're also your boss. And I think a lot of people misconstrue that when it comes to being a nanny, because you're in someone's household, so you kind of get comfortable, but it's like that's still your boss. You need to treat that like anything else. Like not telling your boss, oh, I went out and got, you know, hammered last night, and they're looking like, do you have a hangover right now? Like it's just certain things you shouldn't be conversating with your boss about, you know?
Yeah. And like the same goes for their friends. And I mean, I've known nannies whose bosses' friends have like said, I saw this on your nanny's social media this weekend, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, so just if you can keep that as private as you can, because you have the right to live your life how you want to live your life, you know, but you also have the right to keep that part of your life yours.
That is true.
Yeah. So just make sure you're representing yourself well on Facebook, any social media.
I agree.
Oh, this was a great question. Why do nanny agencies always pressure me to take a job or not give me enough time to think about it? I have known agencies that do this, and it is not comfortable for the nanny. I totally understand that. However, it is a competitive market these days. And we have clients calling us consistently about, did you find a nanny? Does this nanny want to interview? Does she want the job? You know, and a lot of times parents work with multiple agencies as well. So it's not even just the agency's pool that you're dealing with. It's like agencies' pools.
Yeah.
So you might have applied to a job and the family might be interested in hiring you. They might also be interested in hiring like 5 or 6 other nannies. So sometimes, yes, agencies are just pushy, and that might not be the agency that you want to work with, because it is important that you love your job.
Mm-hmm.
However, it also might be a really highly sought after nanny job, and the agency might not want you to miss it. So once again, it comes down to communication. Just
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, I'm still thinking about this job. I'm feeling a little bit of pressure from you. Is this a very competitive position? Are you concerned that I'm going to miss out if I don't make up the mindset? Because if not, I need a few days to think about it and make sure it's a right fit for me.
The
Be
community.
straightforward about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And hopefully the agency will hear that. I mean, and if they don't, again, like reconsider which agency you're working with. Do your research, see if there's a better option for you.
I think it comes down to just educating yourself on how to approach a lot of things, like these situations, like how to talk to the agency, like, hey, it's a little bit too much, like you just said,
Yeah.
and agencies being able to, you know,
Yeah.
talk about that.
And I have a friend right now that's dealing with a similar situation, and the agency came back with, well, you knew this was how this was going to be. And I personally would be like, well, and now I'm, very sure. And so I would like to pull my resume, so you
Yeah.
do have that option. And contracts, there are agency contracts. Just make sure that you read through them very well. If you have any questions, make sure you ask them. Take time to get counseling on that. Make sure you know what you're signing with that. And the same with nanny contracts, but also, like you said, have your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got a question from a nanny. So why do I have to have a contract with the agency and the family?
Well, because the agency's contract is going to cover the conduct that you have, and that you have basically with the agency. You really, it's two different entities. So you have the family contract because that's what the family is expecting from you. You have
Mm-hmm.
the agency contract because that is what you are responsible and holding up to with the agency, which is generally like, yes, I've provided true and actual, factual details. I'm not lying about this. Yes, you have permission to check my background. Yes, you have permission to do this and to represent me in this light to clients.
Mm-hmm.
So agency contracts and family contracts are not that similar, and they are very separate things. So that's why there's two of them, because the agency is not your employer. The
Absolutely.
agency is representing you to be employed.
Mm-hmm. Ann says, yes, and role play with a friend. I hate conflict, as Coach Jess knows.
I hate conflict so much, and I feel like a lot of times when we hate it, we bring it to ourselves. And so I often practice it. Still to this day, I will practice it because I don't like it either. But the truth is, it feels bad when you start it,
Yeah.
but it usually ends a lot better than you think it's going to.
And to be in this field, conflict comes a lot with parents sometimes.
Yeah,
And so,
it really does.
yeah.
I do have one more question that I thought was interesting. So this question from this nanny is that, how do I tell my boss's friend that their nanny is basically trash talking them during play dates? Maybe you don't want to get involved in that situation. The issue can be, it's almost like when a nanny family relationship turns bitter, it can be a lot like a bitter divorce. And so the downside to that is, a lot of times the parents will complain about the nanny all weekend, and the nanny will complain about the parents all week. But what happens then is the kids are stuck dealing with it. So if you think that the kids are in a bad position, then maybe you really do want to talk to the parents about it. I would maybe actually try talking to the nanny about it first and just be like, hey, listen, I know that you're really unhappy in your job, but these kids spend a lot of time with you and a lot of time with their parents, and they love their parents. And, if there's no change, and if in your heart you feel like it's the right thing to do and you want to broach it, like, go for it. But just know that there could be some pretty considerable fallback for getting involved in that. Maybe even talk to your mom boss if she's really close friends with them.
Yeah, like I would just have to think about the kids. Like they're the
Yeah,
ones affected by something like that.
it is a pretty toxic environment. Nothing to do with agencies, but I have seen it come up a lot. And I do think that it's a tough situation, and I'm not sure that there's any really form of communication that is not going to end up coming back around and blowing up in your face. So if you're prepared for that to happen, if you feel like it's valued enough, then, you know, always follow your heart, do what you think is right, but just be prepared that in that situation, it could get ugly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I have one last question. And does the agency pay me or the family? Coming from a nanny.
Well, so all of the agencies I've worked with and the agencies I've run, we have not paid the nanny. And I have always gotten my paycheck straight from the family. And I believe most agencies are that way. There might be some exceptions, but for the most part, you're employed by the family. So the paycheck will be coming from the family. A lot of bigger agencies, I mean, 5 or 10 years ago, they did handle the nanny's paycheck, but most of them have gone away from that at this point. So usually it's a direct pay from your boss to you.
Beautiful. You've been awesome. Look at us. We did this too. I got you. Got you.
Thanks for having me on. And, you know, I love to talk agency stuff. So
I know. We need to do this where we have the nanny's point of view. Nannies working with agencies and just.
Yes, I would love to hear both. There's a lot of nannies that actually I would love to hear their perspective on this. So yes, let's do that.
Do a nannies and then maybe even do a parent or just, you know, the agency's point of view as well.
Yeah.
Again, that would be nice.
Yeah. Do we know a parent that's used an agency?
I know my mom. But I'll research and get back to you with that.
Yeah, let's set it up. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Not loopy.
No.
Strep throat stuff.
No, you're good. I just wanted to make sure you were okay doing the talking.
I am. All right. Well, looking forward to it next time.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Good night, guys.
Good night.